My name is Heather, and I want to extend International Women's Day greetings and solidarity from Socialist Resurgence in the United States. It's definitely a different International Women's Day this year as the world continues to struggle with COVID-19. Within the United States and, of course, across the world, the pandemic has had devastating impacts upon women. I work at a domestic violence shelter and have seen firsthand the impact of COVID-19 through increased violence and isolation of women, but also the strain on domestic violence services. Pandemic-related lockdowns, unemployment, and restrictions have forced women to stay home with their abusers. When the pandemic began, various domestic violence agencies and hotlines noticed increased call volume. In my own work, the pandemic has created barriers such as reduced access and scheduling of public transportation, limited shelter availability across the state, challenges connecting survivors to resources such as therapy, housing, and benefits because these are closed or have more limited hours, survivor fears of contracting COVID within the shelter, and shelter worker safety concerns. I also work part-time at a reproductive health clinic, the only abortion provider in northern Minnesota. Some patients travel hundreds of miles to our clinic, which also serves northern Wisconsin and Michigan. This is typical of the United States, where abortion access is abysmal. The COVID-19 pandemic was used as an excuse in multiple states to restrict this already limited abortion access, arguing that it was not essential health care. These restrictions, while struck down in courts, had immediate impacts on the lives of women trying to access abortion, as their appointments were canceled and they often had to travel out of state or not have a procedure at all. While Minnesota was not one of the states which passed restrictions, the pandemic has only emboldened the anti-choice movement. Even in the deadliest days of the pandemic, these protesters would show up at the clinic where I work, often without masks, to harass patients and workers as we entered the building. There are countless ways in which the pandemic has intensified the oppression of women. Women lost over 5 million jobs in the first 10 months of the pandemic. In December 2020, almost all of these jobs were held by Hispanic, Black, and Asian women. Women are also forced out of employment due to lack of childcare. COVID restrictions, which closed schools and daycares, meant that women had to leave the labor force to provide childcare for their children. At the same time, women make up 58% of essential workers who make less than $15 an hour. This means that throughout the pandemic, women have risked their lives to serve food, clean, work in grocery stores, care for the elderly and people with disabilities, and other low-wage service and healthcare work. Typically, feminist groups that I'm involved in would have protests, panels, art shows, lectures, and many other activities planned for International Women's Day and Women's History Month. But this year, due to the pandemic, there's not a lot specifically planned for my region. Hopefully, the overview of some of these issues that women face can highlight what we must do as we organize. We need expanded abortion access. Without waiting periods, parental consent laws, or restrictions on federal funding. Abortion is healthcare, and it should be available on demand without stigma. We need social provisioning, such as housing, daycare, universal healthcare, expanded mental health care, and increased public transportation, so that these things are not barriers to relieving an abusive relationship. Lack of basic social provisioning extracts unpaid labor from women who bear the burden of care work in capitalism. The United States government cruelly forced essential workers into hazardous conditions to keep the economy functioning. We need unions. We need to reduce unemployment by shortening the work week but providing full-time wages. And of course, to accomplish all this and more, we need an anti-capitalist and international feminist movement which doesn't want to see women in boardrooms or war rooms. And I hope I can be a part of this movement, which doesn't seek to gain power within capitalism, but to end capitalism, its wars, its waste, its devouring of this planet, its racist police and prisons, its haves and have-nots. And if not this March 8th, I hope we can march together again soon. Thank you.